Super. Thanks very much. So welcome and good afternoon. So I'm going to take you through today low-cost opportunities across social media. So in terms of the presentation today, we're going to talk initially about who are Wavemaker as an agency. So we are one of DFE's partner agencies. So I'm going to talk a little bit about us and how we fit in the food chain. We'll do a really top-line intro in terms of the DFE marketing across 2019-2020, and then we'll start to go into the detail of the presentation. So, earned and owned media, what do we mean by that? My colleague Jacqueline will take you through a bit of a media. She'll be giving you some helpful hints and tips to kind of see what can we do to make the best things from your side, and then we'll start to provide you with some trends, and then we're going to open the floor at the end to a Q&A session. So you should have a comment box that you will have access to. If you wouldn't mind just putting your questions at the comment box, and what we can do then is we can start to answer those questions at the end. So without further ado, who are Wavemaker? So in terms of who we are, so we're the DFE's media planning and strategy agency. So what we get involved in is obviously defining that strategy. We do an awful lot of audience work in terms of insight work. So we work with another populace in terms of that insight piece. What we then do is then use that to start informing our strategy and our channel planning. There's obviously a number of different agencies that the DFE work with. We kind of come back in at the end in terms of that evaluation piece, just to make sure that everything is delivering. So in terms of the team today, so there's two of us. So my name's Claire Ellison. So I'm the account director at Wavemaker. I've been on the DFE business for about 3 years in different guises. I've got nearly 20 years experience across comms planning and client leadership, across a number of different brands, FMCG brands, retail, and also obviously working on a DFE and DWP, lots of behavioural change clients.
Hi everyone, and I'm Jacqueline. So I am an account director here as well, specialising in social media. And I have around 7 years experience looking after social media and also now influencer strategy for a range of FMCG brands, so the likes of Aldi, Carrot, Saint-Tropez, and Princes, among others.
Super. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a tour in terms of the DFE marketing across 1920, just to give you a flavour of what we do, and a little bit about our audience. So the audience is actually really broad in terms of when we're looking to get people to recruit teachers. The primary target audience is adults 18 to 55, and they obviously have to meet criteria. So they have to obviously have to have graduated or are currently studying through a degree. But then, as well as the broad audience, we then have macro audiences. So we have our students and grads audience, and then we have our career seekers. So a career seeker could actually be very early in their career, typically aged 23 to 29, or they could be much later in their career and they're looking to actually change careers. So that 30 plus audience. We do find that 51% of entrants to teacher training are under 25, and the remainder are over 25. So it's actually really important that we talk to both of these different audience groups. We've actually also got another audience, which is our friends and family. So these are kind of like your influencers. So people that are obviously going to have obviously a bearing in terms of our audience. So that's a little bit about our audience. So what does the marketing mix look like across 19 to 20? So what you'll see here is we've got a number of different channels on here. So we've got our broadcast channels, so we've got our television, our cinema, and our video on demand. And this is very much about delivering mass audience reach. But we also want to, with the creative work, obviously leverage that emotional engagement with the audience. We've also got a number of radio strands of our plan. So that's from airtime through to partnerships, through to podcasts. We do have an element of national press, activity, and we publisher partnerships as well. I think what's really important about the partnerships is that we do know that the journey to application can obviously take up to 18 months. So it's about, we need to be able to carry on that communication. So it's not just about putting a TV ad or a 25x4 press advertising. It's about creating that dialogue and that relationship with people, because it's like I say, it's an always-on kind of process, and we need to make sure that we're communicating with our potential audience at all times. So obviously partnerships are really important. And then you can see obviously we've also got paid search, and we've got all the social channels, which Jacqueline's going to talk to you a little bit about in terms of these channels, but obviously they're very important as part of the strategy. Moving on to the regional strategy, so we're actually working with 89 local authority districts. In terms of our approach, in terms of our marketing comms, we obviously facilitate these types of workshops that the webinar that we're doing today, which is very much about talking around different disciplines. So obviously today being social media, but there's a variety of different webinars and workshops, obviously just to provide that kind of level of information. Our activity, we work with the RDD, working close collaboration to create case studies, and this is about building relationships with local stakeholders in the different LAD areas. That's really important. And then from a paid point of view, we are doing activity across Facebook in terms of instant experiences. So that's just a little bit of a context in terms of some of the activity that's going on.
Okay, so moving on then to earned and owned media. So there are three kind of categories that we can put media into. The first one is paid, and as the kind of name suggests, this is basically just any activity that you're going to be paying for. This can encompass lots of different things, really. So TV advertising, for example, radio advertising, press advertising, also paid social media advertising, and then paid search ads as well. So that's the adverts that you get on the top of Google. There's also owned. So this is any content that you create and publish and actually own yourself, and you're going to be hosting this on channels that you own as well. So that could be things such as the content that you put on your website, content that you share on your social media accounts, and then also content that you're sharing with people through emails as well. And then you also have earned media, and this is kind of conversations about your brand that you haven't actually generated yourselves. It's been created by somebody else. So this could be social media conversation about your brand, so comments and interaction from people. It can be organic search, so this is results that would appear in Google if you search for your brand, and it could be the result of something like news coverage, or it could be things like reviews and online publications, or it could be something that's on forums. And each type of content needs different approaches, really. So with paid, particularly on social media, we always recommend what we call a fewer, bigger, better approach. So this is about if you haven't got huge budgets necessarily, so it's about sharing fewer pieces of high quality content and then distributing that spend effectively to get the reach on that content. With your owned content, it's really important to ensure that this is designed for the audience and built for platforms. So we'll come on to talk about this a little bit more further on in the presentation, but it's about making sure that the content that you're sharing on your social media channels is actually built for each platform, so that you're ensuring best practice, which also will hopefully make it more efficient for you. And also considering the behavior of people on those platforms as well. So people interact with content differently on Twitter, for example, to the way that they potentially would on Facebook. So that's something that needs to be considered. And like I said, we will come on to talk a bit more about this later on. And then finally, the earned section. So this is all about leveraging voices that your audience care about and having some brand advocates, because People really trust authentic recommendations and conversations. If they see somebody talking positively about a brand on social media or in the comments, they're more likely to trust that recommendation than necessarily just kind of lots of self-promotion from that brand. So that word of mouth element and user-generated content is really important. When budgets are limited, this is where, and you haven't got a lot of money to be doing all that kind of paid activity. It's earned and owned media that can be a great way for you to encourage local engagements and get that reach and engagement with people when you haven't got a lot of money. We're going to delve a little bit deeper then into the social media side of this, and like I just said, we're going to focus on the owned and earned side of things and how you can make the most of those. So the first thing to point out is that, as I'm sure all of you already know, social media is absolutely huge these days, considering that in the grand scheme of things, it's actually social media is fairly new. The oldest of the social platforms is actually LinkedIn, followed then by Facebook, which launched in 2002 and 2004 respectively. So yeah, they haven't actually been around for that long, but despite of that, they've grown considerably over that time. And yeah, as I'm sure you all know, social media is absolutely huge these days. Just to put out a few of these facts, so Facebook is the oldest and it's still the biggest, launched in 2004 and now has around 40 million monthly unique visitors. Instagram is actually one of the newer platforms that launched in 2010. It's actually owned by Facebook, but that's been one of the biggest growing of all the platforms, particularly among a slightly younger audience. And that now has 24 million monthly unique UK users. Twitter is one of the older ones, launching in 2006. That's currently at 13.6 million UK monthly users, and that's actually the only ones that we've seen decline a little. Where some like Instagram in particular are growing hugely, Twitter's actually kind of slowed down a little. LinkedIn, 27 million monthly UK users, and then Snapchat, which again is one of the new ones, and that's definitely appeals to a much younger user base, but that's also grown quite quickly. However, it is among the smaller of the biggest ones. So these are huge. They do have very big scale, and obviously all of those millions of users aren't necessarily going to be relevant for you and the kind of messages that you want to convey. So the key thing is using the right content and the right approach to reach the people and find those people on the social media platforms that actually matter to you and the message that you're trying to communicate. Why can you use social media to encourage local engagements? How could it actually help you? So one of the great things about social media is that it has quite an informal delivery. So because you are sharing short form content, it allows you to show off a bit more of your brand personality through your content. More generally, it can be a little bit more, I'd say, perhaps light-hearted than some sorts of other forms of content. And it's also very fast-paced. So if you compare that to your website, where you're likely to have long reads of information, longer pieces of content for people to read and learn from, that's going to sit there for a long time and have more longevity. Social media is much quicker and it's more short-form pieces of content that can be in lots of different ways. So images and videos, for example, rather than perhaps all of the text that you'd have on the website. It also fosters a two-way conversation. So it's a really great way for you to interact with people really easily, because it's so easy for them to share comments and reply to messages and things like that on social media. It's a really great way to interact with people. And then also local networking. So because it does have a more local feel to it, because you have got that option just to interact with people very easily. So it's a quick and easy way to speak to a local network of people around your organisation. So I'm just going to give you a bit more information about the kind of main big social media pages, just so you can kind of like have a bit of a better understanding of them, kind of the age group of people that use them, and then hopefully just kind of help you when you're, you know, making decisions about potentially where you want to be and where you want to be sharing your content as well, and different ways that you can use these platforms. So Facebook is definitely, it's a platform that's more around building a network around real life relationships. So it started off as a way for people to kind of interact with their friends. You have to add people to your account, respond to follow requests, etc. And it's definitely built around those networks around friends and family. However, people also do follow on there, but in a different way to Instagram. It doesn't quite have the same influencer culture, we call it, as Instagram does. The largest age bracket of UK Facebook users are aged between 25 and 34, and then 35 to 44-year-olds being the biggest age category. And this is actually slightly older than what we see on some of the other channels. For example, Instagram and Snapchat have a much younger user base than Facebook. It's also very broad and versatile, so there's lots and lots of things you can do with Facebook. It supports a very wide range of media, so you can live chat on it, you can video chat, you can stream live videos, you can make purchases within Facebook. Now I'm sure you've all had adverts coming up from, you know, brands where you can just click and purchase right there and then, and you can post all sorts of different content as well. And then most of the content that you see on Facebook comes from your network, so people or brands that you already follow, unless it's an advert. So people don't really search for hashtags in the same way that they do on Instagram or Twitter, so that's something to Instagram is a very aesthetically focused platform. It's mobile first, so although you can access it on a desktop to see content, you can't share through desktop or anything like that, and the functionality is quite different. So definitely very mobile focused. It's all about sharing very aspirational, inspirational content, videos and photos that are of high quality. It's quite a competitive market as well. This is where what we call influencer culture lives. So there is a lot of competition on there. It's a newer platform that is definitely appealing to the youth market. Like I said before, it's sort of younger age group, yeah, 18 to 25. I think it's the biggest age group on there now. Although it's more competitive, people there kind of definitely consume content more. It has more of their attention and they kind of stay on the platform for longer than what they do on some of the other social platforms. Because of that, engagement rates and interactions are often stronger on Instagram than it is on Facebook, for example. Also, if you use Instagram yourself, you'll know this, it has the explore function. So as well as just having the feed of content from people or brands that you follow, you also have the opportunity to explore hashtags, explore places, explore other content related to things that you've interacted with. So that's definitely something it encourages a social platform. And then IGTV and Instagram stories are two newer elements to the platform, with stories in particular growing rapidly. We've got a slide a bit about that coming up a bit further on, but that's seen an absolutely been a huge growth area for Instagram. Twitter is very fast-paced digital landscape. It's more the place where people go if they want kind of real-time information and live updates on things, particularly when it comes to news consumption. And it's really opened up the conversation between brands and consumers, because it's very easy to tweet a brand or retweet some content or comment or direct message them if you wanted to get in touch with a brand. So it really fosters that two-way relationship. Tweets are limited to 280 characters, so it's all about short bursts of informative content, but you can share videos and images on there with that, which is definitely something that we'd recommend, because generally you find that content that does have media with it as well is more engaging. And the user base is predominantly on mobile, which is always something that you should be considering when planning your content, is that social media these days is predominantly consumed on mobile. LinkedIn, this is slightly different to the others in that it's purely a professional business network, and it has a very older, more career-driven demographic. It's a bit more niche than some of the other channels. Content doesn't cover such a diverse range of topics, but for those professionals in that sphere who do want to consume that kind of content, it's real kind of high quality stuff because of that. It's an opportunity for people to have content seen by other professionals and build credibility in the field if they're sharing content such as blog posts, etc., about a particular topic. And yeah, it encourages connections with colleagues and other professionals within an area to help build a business network. Finally, just a quick note on Snapchat. So this is, again, a mobile-only platform like Instagram, and it really pioneered that temporary approach to content. So like Instagram stories that disappear after 24 hours, that's how Snapchat started. Videos and pictures that people shared were only available for a limited period of time. It's very much a younger user base than the other social media platforms, and lots of people now, rather than communicating with their friends via WhatsApp or the messages on their phone, they'll just be in the Snapchat app and they'll message through that as well as sharing content through it. There is the opportunity to do some advertising on Snapchat for brands, although it's not quite as diverse or as advanced as some of the other platforms such as Facebook or Instagram. So that's kind of an overview of the main platforms. Obviously, all of them do have some pros and cons and things to consider when you're choosing where you want to be posting your content or which platforms you want to be present on. So Facebook, yeah, really genuine network that supports multiple content variants. So that's something to bear in mind if you use to various things, you know, different types of content and assets like videos and images and things. However, it's hard to discover, it's harder for people to discover new organic content outside of what they already follow. And compared to Twitter and Instagram, Facebook actually has one of the lowest organic engagement rates because of the way its algorithm works. It doesn't show content to as many people in their feed. And we've got some suggestions, we'll come on to talk a bit later about ways in which when you should be sharing content on platforms to bear in mind to make the most of that. Instagram is all about beautiful, aspirational imagery and video content, which is very engaging. However, because of that, it's important to ensure that the assets are of really high quality, because people just simply won't really give much consideration to sub-quality content. If it's, you know, very grainy or it doesn't fill the screen or excite them, it's not going to create any impact. So that needs to be considered. Place to go for real-time information and updates. However, because of that, it's very fast moving. It's quite a cluttered platform, so it can be difficult to cut through sometimes. Again, that's where the quality of your content comes into play. LinkedIn is a professional, it's a more niche platform. It fosters very good high quality content. However, it is usually a slightly older demographic and potentially for people who are more invested already in the industry or the company, etc., in which they work already. Finally, Snapchat. So this has a younger user base. They spend a lot of time in that platform. However, it doesn't offer as much variation as some of the other platforms in terms of the content that can be shared or advertising plans. I think the thing to consider here is that it's important to have a presence on the platform, not necessarily all of these platforms. You need to consider what kind of content you have and what capabilities you have, and then have a presence on the platforms that you can actually make the most of with what you have available to you. So we're going to go on now to kind of give some guidance around some social media hints and tips, and bearing in mind what we kind of know about these platforms, the different formats and ways that you can use them to make the most out of your content and what you're sharing with people. Different types of content that you can be sharing. First of all, information. So this could basically cover anything really. So updates, events, information, anything that people need to know if they're considering getting into teaching, which should be shared with a suitable asset. So we always recommend Facebook, obviously on Instagram, you have to share an image, and most of the time on Twitter as well, that you're sharing some kind of image or video content with your posts, because this just makes it much more engaging for people. It's more likely to capture their attention when they're scrolling through their feed. Attention spans are so low now, people move very quickly through their social media content. It's important that what you're sharing does catch their attention. So this could be information about an upcoming event that you want them to attend or that might be of interest to them, updates from within the industry, updates about your institution itself, updates with news about anything from the DFE or information they need about that for their application, and cover anything really. Imagery as well, so this is really important. Single images or also carousel images, which is when you can have a series of images that you can put through. And there's loads of different things that you can include here. So they could be actually things about your institution itself, things that you're proud of, events that you've run, or it could be marketing material from the DFE toolkit. So you can use those, the templates that I've got in there to include some quotes or stats for followers. We've already discussed previously that people do take inspiration and do take guidance from their peers. So things like quotes from people who are already teachers or who have been through the process of applying to be a teacher could be of real interest there. Well, so videos are super engaging, and they're actually generally the most engaging format on social media. So if you can get some video content on there, that's fantastic, particularly on Facebook and Instagram as well. And this doesn't have to be really long video content or anything overly complicated. Kind of often shorter, snappier video content is much more effective. But this could be something, snippet from an advert. So rather than showing, a really long 30-second advert, you could just cut a little snippet from it. It could be a little piece to camera from a teacher with a quote about how much they love their job, or it could even just be something as simple as like some graphic imagery. It doesn't necessarily need to include a person or people in it. It could be some animated text or something like that that's just adding some movement to an aspect to make it more interesting for people. And then also wider news and industry updates. So if people are getting into teaching or considering this as a career, is there any kind of wider information or news updates that could be of interest to them that would then kind of show you to be an authority on the subject on social media, meaning that you're a brand or you're a company that they follow on social media, you can actually like gain information from as well. So you're just kind of giving them a bit more when they see your content. I want to just give you a few tips specifically on video content as well, because like I said, this is really important. It's probably the most engaging format on social media, but it can be quite easy to fall down here or to overcomplicate things or not get video right. But there are some, I guess, key rules to follow to try and help you make the most of video content that you're sharing on your social channels. The first thing is it's really important to keep them short. With a few sections, it's very difficult to retain a user's attention for a long period of time on social media. So really, any video content that you should be sharing should only be around 6 to 10 seconds long, 15 seconds at a push potentially, but it's much, much shorter the kind of content you would be sharing for like a TV advert, for example. One thing that you can do if you do have longer pieces of content created for maybe a YouTube channel or a website or something like that, that could be 30 seconds long or a minute, is actually, rather than just sharing that on your social channels as it is, considering how you can just cut little snippets from that to make them shorter. So rather than sharing one minute long video, could you cut that into 3 or 4 little 15 or 10 second snippets from that video instead, so then you're actually getting 4 pieces of social content out of it. It's also really important to get the branding and your key message in early within the first 3 seconds. So when people are scrolling through their feed, even if they don't watch all of your video, at least then, even if it is the only first 3 seconds that they see, it'll mean that they've still seen your branding, they've still kind of got a feel for what your video was about. Another important thing to consider is adding subtitles to your videos. Because people often, the majority of people these days are consuming social media on their mobiles, and lots of them won't have the sound on their mobiles when they're doing that. 85% of views actually happen with the sound off. And on Facebook, if you have subtitles, it's actually been shown that they can lengthen the video view time by up to 12%. So it can actually have a real impact on the viewing of your videos, and it just means that people are more likely to understand it, they're more likely to get what it's about, and therefore get more from the content. And it works, if it works with both sound off and sound on, then it's more engaging for people. It's also important to ensure that your videos are either vertical or square in format. So because so many people are watching their videos, are consuming social media content on their mobiles, if you've got square or vertical video format, it means that it fills more of the screen, so it's more impactful, and it's more likely to get their attention. If it's horizontal, it will still work, but if you can picture a little horizontal video on a mobile screen, it doesn't take up quite as much of the space, so it's less likely to capture their attention. And then finally, as I mentioned before, if you don't have the resources to film, some bespoke video content or commission some actual video content yourself, just cutting down longer form content is an easy way to create yourself some social media videos, or just adding some simple animation or text overlays to bring static content to life. So it could be that you already have some static imagery, you could just add some animation to that to add a bit of, turn it into a video content. It doesn't have to be a really complicated piece. So these are just some kind of general tips around the content that you're sharing on social media. So one of the key things is the captions that you share with them. The same way that people don't sit and watch a really long video content on social media, it's also unlikely that they are going to sit there and read a really, really long caption either. The whole point of social media is that it's quick and easily consumable, snackable content. So make sure that the captions that you're using to accompany your social media posts are nice, short and snappy. If you do have a lot to say, then consider, would it be better as a piece of video content, or would it be better if you linked out to a blog post instead, so you could promote the blog on your social media pages and then have a link that people can click to go through and read the whole article, so you're not putting a really, really long caption on your Facebook page, for example. Also, if you are sharing links, use a website like Bitly to shorten them. It's more of an aesthetic thing, really. If you've got really, really long URLs that you're putting in social media posts, it can look very messy and it can discourage people from clicking on them. So just a shorter link is more attractive to people and they're more likely to click through. If you're posting on Instagram and Twitter, make sure that you're always using relevant hashtags and tagging in the @handles of other brands if you're mentioning them, or other Twitter users. And this is important because it helps to increase organic visibility. So if people are searching for those hashtags, then it will mean that your content could come up in their feed and they can discover it that way. If you're tagging other brands in your content using the little @sign, that also means that they are going to see that content. They might retweet it or share it amongst their friends. And it's just, again, another way of kind of increasing the visibility and awareness of your page by doing that. It's also important, so you might know already, if you're using things like Instagram and Twitter, when you create a piece of content, the apps will sometimes give you the option to share that piece of content across other apps as well. So if you create an Instagram post, you can tick it for it also to share it across Facebook and Twitter. We don't recommend doing that, because if you do put links in your content, or you tag another brand in it, or use hashtags, that tag doesn't necessarily then work across other platforms, because it's for example, it's an Instagram tag rather than being a Facebook one. So you're basically kind of breaking the links in your content. So we always recommend that content is optimized for each channel. You can definitely post the same type of content or the same wording across them, but you just need to make sure you tweak it depending on which platform you're sharing. And then also consider some different types of content formats. So if you've got lots of images, why not share them in a carousel so people can scroll through them and explore that way rather than just sharing loads and loads of posts one after the other. Or consider doing something like Instagram stories. So if you're creating, if you're an event, say, using lots of sharing loads of pictures from that event on your Instagram channel is maybe not the best use of that content. However, using Instagram stories to share kind of behind the scenes pieces or updates throughout the day would be much more effective. And also making sure that you use assets that are the right size for your social channels. So different channels obviously have different dimensions and they're kind of built. So using something like the DFE toolkit, which helps you resize them, means that you are making the most of that platform by sharing content that's big enough. The images aren't going to be all pixelated. It's going to fill the screen, etc. Attention spans and organic reach are really changing on social media. So it's really important that brands earn a user's attention, and to do that you need to make sure you're sharing relevant content on the right platforms and at the right time. So we've got an example here from Civil Service Fast Stream of how they have shared content essentially about the same thing but on different channels and adapted it to different channels, just to give you an example of what we mean by that and share the different types of content in different ways. So here, on the first one, which is LinkedIn, they've got quite this nice, bold, eye-catching creative. And it's about talking about an event that they're holding. So it's advertising that event. And it's very informative. It's quite a functional piece of content, telling people to click through to find out about events that is taking campus and how they can attend. Sorry, that's the first one. Then LinkedIn, here now they're talking actually about the event themselves. This is what I was saying before about how you can be showing pictures from the event to give people a feel for what's going on. And then Instagram, which is a very aesthetically focused platform. They have gone for something a bit more fun. It's a coffee cup with the wording on it. So it's just something a little bit different. It's still talking about but in a slightly more fun and engaging way that's suitable for that platform and is likely to appeal to that kind of younger audience base. So picking out the kind of main 3 channels that I think would be focuses the kind of content that you're going to be sharing, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and how often should you be posting on these channels with your content? Facebook has the lowest organic reach of the 3 main platforms. And the reason for that basically is the way that its algorithm works is that it doesn't necessarily show content that you share to everyone that you follow. It will show it to a percentage of those people, and then depending on how many interactions or engagements you get with that content, it will then start showing it to more people because of that. So really, you don't want to be posting lots and lots of content out on Facebook over and over again throughout the day, multiple times throughout the day, because a lot of it simply won't get seen by people unless you're getting very, very high levels of engagement. I'm talking thousands of engagements there. So really, you want to be reserving Instagram for like really key, important updates that you're sharing potentially slightly less frequently. If you were at an event, for example, and you wanted to share updates about that event throughout the day, Facebook wouldn't be the platform for that because a lot of them would just get lost and wouldn't get seen. So yeah, really key, good quality updates. You definitely want to ensure you've got a video or an image accompanying your asset when you're sharing it on Facebook as well. Comparison. Instagram is slightly better. So the organic reach on Instagram is around 30 to 60% of your audience compared to less than 2% on Facebook. So it offers much better, offers much greater visibility. But as I mentioned before, it's important to ensure you have the right content on Instagram because kind of subpar or grainy or pixelated content just won't really do as well on that platform. So definitely some really nice visuals. Again, definitely want to be ensuring you're sharing video if possible, and also really nice imagery, but also at the same time you don't want to overload it, like once a day maximum really for Instagram. On Twitter, so again, the algorithm is much kinder to organic content than Facebook. It doesn't kind of restrict it in the same way. However, it is quite a fast-moving platform. So because of that, this is the platform for snappy, real-time, and much more frequent updates that you could be sharing content multiple times throughout the day if you wanted to. So if you know you're getting all this great content out there and you're kind of giving much more consideration to the content you're sharing, you want to ensure that people are actually seeing it as well. And if you don't have the kind of paid spend or the paid capabilities to be promoting your pages, using some paid sponsorship, then you need to be doing it organically. And there are some ways that you can try and attract new fans to your social pages. Way in which you can do that is interaction outreach. So being present on social media yourself. So getting involved in conversations on social media, engaging and conversing with other relevant organizations and their followers. And that's just about kind of building some more brand awareness of, you know, your pages on there as well. So you're getting that visibility among other people that are already interacting with organizations relevant to you. Yes, and paid adverts, that is an option for you if you do have that budget there. But obviously that's not what we're focusing on here, but that is one way to help grow your audiences. Using hashtags to join in relevant online conversation. Make sure you're always using some relevant hashtags in your content on Facebook and Instagram to kind of aid discoverability and encouraging more people to find your content when they're exploring the platforms. Some logos, so you can put social media logos on your website, on other communications like your emails, and these can link through to your social media pages. So that way you're encouraging people to follow by clicking on those links, and again, like I said, through emails as well. So not just with the links on your emails, but you could actually send an email to people telling them that you now have social media channels, you're now on Facebook, do they follow you on Instagram, etc. So just kind of really actively encouraging people that you already have in your database, signed up to your emails, etc., to follow you that way. And also through community management. So if you do get people who reach out to you via your social media page because they want some more information about something or they have a question, make sure that you're going back to them in a timely way and interacting with them and responding to their comments, because people really do value that kind of interaction on social media. Just a point on that as well, the thing with social media is that people do expect a response these days when they are communicating with brands on social media. They like it because it means that they can see that they're getting instant responses from brands. So if you just send an email to a brand with a customer service department of a brand, or you try phoning them, you could be on the ages, you could be on hold, it could be days before you get an email response for them. Whereas with social media, people expect a much quicker response time. So if you can give that to them, it also kind of helps to build that brand trust as well, and you can get that kind of two-way conversation going with somebody through your social media account. Then also just a few kind of current social media trends and things that are happening at the moment that could also help to inform your content or just give you a bit more kind of guidance or ideas when you're creating social media content. So using social media for careers, this is definitely the place to be if you are encouraging people to get into a career in teaching, or where people are going to be looking at this kind of information. So while recruiters prefer LinkedIn as their means of communicating with people and getting in touch with people for roles, job seekers themselves are actually more active on social media sites when it comes to jobs. So 94% of recruiters are active on LinkedIn versus 36% of job seekers. Whereas when you look at other social channels, 65% of recruiters are active on Facebook, but 83% of job seekers are. So this is really actually a great opportunity for you to be reaching these people. More than a third of job seekers say that they use social media to look for or at least research around jobs. So this is where what I mentioned before about how you can use your page to share information about industry updates or events or things like that. Having that content on your social media page is kind of could be potentially attractive to these people who are looking around just to get a bit more information about the industry or a school or a university, whatever it might be. 1 in 5 have applied for a job that they first found out about on social media, and 13% say that information posted on their social media profiles has helped them to get a job. So definitely sphere or an area that you want to be present in. And then social media really, the usage of it varies with age. We're just got a couple of charts here that show that. So the majority of people are active on one or more social media platforms, but you can see that as people get older, the blue chart on the left, as people get older, the percentage of them that are only on one social media network is much higher. Whereas, I mean, among the younger age groups, so 16 to 19 and 20 to 24, they are a higher percentage of them are active on more social media networks. So depending on the age group that you want to be reaching with your content, this is where you want to consider being on multiple platforms, and which platforms you want to be on is relevant to the age group you're targeting. So if it is a younger age group, it's definitely looking at Instagram. If you want a mixture of this kind of like 20 to 35 age group, then you want to be looking at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, for example. And then Facebook does remain the most popular social app, but it's also important to consider that popularity does vary with age. So like I just said, consider the age range of the people that you're trying to reach as well when making a decision about where you're going to be on social media. Instagram stories, really nice kind of element of the Instagram app. It's one of the most fastest growing areas of social media. It has millions of daily interactions. And since Instagram launched stories, the amount of time that people spend on Instagram per day grew to 28 minutes. So more and more people are now spending more time within the app in the stories function. And more content is being shared and stored, not versus feed as a whole, but a larger percentage of content is being shared on stories now than it used to be. It's got lots more opportunities and fun things that you can do with content. You can write on them, you can put GIFs on it, you can put text on it. You also have interactive opportunities where you can ask people questions and they can comment on them all through a story that you share. So it's a nice way to engage people. And it's also real-time content that disappears after 24 hours. So while I was saying before that with your Instagram feed, you shouldn't really share more than one a day, Instagram stories is a bit more like Twitter, something you could be updating a few times a day or consistently throughout the day if you want, because people dip in and out of it much more than they do their feed. Have a bit more fun as well, so bring some personality into your content, a bit of humor, a bit more life into your content, and the way you communicate with people. And social messaging is really taking over social media at the moment. So 2 years ago, particularly on a platform such as Facebook, the way people would share content and interact was by reposting it on their own Facebook page or commenting on the post to ask questions. But people are inclined to do that these days, and a lot now prefer to communicate by direct messaging service. So by direct messages or the Facebook messaging, Facebook Messenger app or kind of application within the desktop. So Facebook Messenger has more than 1.3 billion monthly active users, which is huge. And there are more than 375 million monthly active users communicating via direct Instagram messages as well. 56% of people say they would rather message a brand for a query, and 60% like receiving personalized messages as well. This means that companies can respond to questions and concerns very quickly and effectively, but also keeping things for users. So this could be a really nice, easy way to share information with users who have got queries about getting into teaching or have got questions for you. And this kind of like pop-up here that we've got an example of is actually just something that you can turn on your Facebook page in the settings, so that when somebody does click onto your Facebook page, this pops up in the corner, and it gives them that option to chat with you straight away if they wanted to. So it's a nice way of actually encouraging them to talk to you that way as well. So that's it for the main part of the presentation. And now we're going to go through any questions that you've got using the chat box, I believe.
Yes, if you've got any questions, if you wouldn't mind just putting them into the comments section, and we'll try and go through some of them.
You recommend, so I've got a question here, where you recommend cutting videos into snippets. Would you recommend posting the snippets in close succession or spreading them out? I'd definitely say spreading them out, particularly if you're using them on, say, Facebook or Instagram. We wouldn't recommend just putting those out all after one or the other. You should be considering them as their own standalone little pieces of content. So each little video snippet that should have its own little accompanying caption and its own purpose. So definitely spreading them out by a day or so.
One of the other questions was, do you recommend a website or app for adding subtitles to video?
You can do it just on kind of desktop apps like Adobe and things like that. I'm not sure if there's a specific site, but can have a quick look after this and can share a link with Emily.
Yes?
Yeah.
Good Facebook engagement rate. That's a good question. How long is a piece of screen?
Facebook engagement rate now, organically now, is so low. Like 2% is a good engagement rate on Facebook these days. That's probably more like the kind of percentage of people that are going to see your content organically. If you're aiming for 2%, so your engagement rate is probably even less than that, to be honest. This isn't counting any kind of paid media, or if you are boosting your content with some paid spend behind it. This is just purely organic stuff. So yeah, really low, to be honest. You're looking at like 1%.
The question, what is the best way to ensure messages on social media are reaching the correct audience? Also, how do you increase follower numbers?
Increasing follower numbers, some of the ideas that I gave in the presentation, interacting with other brands, so you're increasing your awareness that way, using things like hashtags and tagging other brands and things. In fact, you've got your social media channels via email or through your website as well, and telling people about them, encouraging them to follow you to get more information that way. I would say probably the doing, just advertising it beyond your social media as much as you can as well, just to make people aware that you're on those platforms.
Yeah, I think I've just covered off.
What was the other question on that bit about? How do you make sure that you're sharing the right content for your audience, messages? So knowing your audience, yourselves really, so considering what sort of people do you have generally that kind of use your services to get into teaching? What's the general age range of those people? And then from that, making sure that you're considering that when you're sharing your content on whichever social media platform you're choosing. So like I said, if it's slightly younger, definitely you want to be going for Instagram. If it's slightly older age range, then maybe Facebook and Twitter would be more appropriate. But just definitely kind of putting some thought into each piece of content, thinking, what is the purpose of this? Why am I sharing this? What do I want people to get out of it? Do I want them to sign up to an event? Do I want them to just feel inspired, etc.? And I think just giving thought to each piece of content rather than just sharing something for the sake of it is important, because then if you're clear with what you want people to get out of it, it's more likely they will actually get something out of it then as well.
Question. So if you were to use just one social media platform, which one would you suggest that would target the widest audience?
Either if you're more about reaching a bigger audience, then probably the age range does impact this, but probably Instagram or Twitter, just because your organic visibility and discovery of content on those platforms is much better. Something there about
yeah, so would you please give me a simple explanation of hashtags?
So hashtags basically is a way of discovering content within conversation on a platform. So I'm going to use an example. So whenever you put a hashtag in front of a word, so say social media, for example, if you put a hashtag in front of the word social media, it then turns it into effectively a link. When you click on that, it will then bring up a page within Twitter that has conversation around social media that other people have hashtagged. So basically, using hashtags is a way of you inserting your content into conversation beyond what people will just see when they're scrolling through their feeds, they already follow you. So if then somebody goes on Twitter and thinks, oh, I want to know what people are saying about social media today, they can search for hashtag social media, and then all of the content about that will come up and they can scroll through it that way. So it's basically just a link to get your content into wider conversation. You don't want to be hashtagging like every word, like the or at and all that kind of stuff. You just want to think about what's the key point of your tweet or your Instagram post, or what are people likely to be searching for. That's another key thing to think. If you're tweeting or posting about a specific event, for example, it's likely that event might have a hashtag, or at least where the event is. So kind of give it some thought, really. Or maybe even if you're using a hashtag, search for it social media platform yourself first, and then you'll be able to see if it's something lots of people are talking about or if it's just not something that really people are interested in. Focus on a minimum offering. So another question is, if you were to focus on a minimum offering in terms of covering social media platforms, what would your top two be? So again, definitely Instagram. I think it's the fastest growing of all the platforms. It's easy to get content discovered as long as you've got good quality assets and you've got imagery that you could be sharing on their Instagram. And then between Facebook and Twitter, to be honest, it kind of depends what sort of content you're going to be sharing and essentially what audience you're trying to reach between those two as to which would be the most appropriate.
That's the bottom of the questions. Has anyone else got any more questions? I'm absolutely mortified. It wasn't. It gives you a bit more of a notice. So.
At least we got to the end of it. Oh my god.
Really well on that. I find it really hard when you. I should be able to Peter in the moment. It might not have sent it to you. Let me just get it on my phone.
glitch there, but we're back.
We're back. Very much,
Yeah.
everyone.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we'll make
issues.
sure that obviously the presentation has been recorded, so we'll make sure that everyone gets access to it as well.
Yeah. We'll all the presentation slides will be shared, and we'll look into the subtitles question as well.
Everybody.